Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, into another draft breakdown video. My name is Bahamut, joined by Justing here on the HeroesHearth channel. And of course, we're going to be jumping into another map that is extremely popular, whether it be in Grassroots, CCL play, NGS, Heroes Lounge, or even in your own Storm League games. We're going to be jumping into Infernal Shrines. And of course, Justing, are you ready to talk all things that are Mortar Punisher, Frozen Punisher, and Arcane Punisher?
I'm excited. Infernal Shrines is my favorite map, so let's get right on into it.
So let's start talking about the map in general. What are some of the things that we need to talk about before we even get into the draft when it comes to Infernal Shrines?
So the reason that this is my favorite map is it's very team fight heavy. You fight around the objective and you have a big, large area to fight over that has a lot of chokes. So for a tank, your job is super important. There's a lot of chokes that you need to control and you need to know how far onto the shrine you can go. Because basically if both teams are about halfway up the shrine, it'll be about an even trade to getting enough skeletal defenders to get the objective. So kind of knowing exactly how far you can go past that halfway point as the tank is really important. And it's just a really team fight heavy map. Not a lot of split pushing can go on. So I really like it for that reason. It's just really brawl heavy and really team fight focused.
Well, let's start talking about the draft immediately and dive into how we will develop these team fights as well as the push potential and the shrine clear. So for the sake of this video, we're going to start with our left-hand side team, team number 1 or team A as our first pick team. And what do we get from these bans from both sides here, Justing?
So the first pick team is going to ban Stukov and the second pick team is going to ban Joe. And the reason for these is Stukov is a priority pick, but it might not necessarily be what you want to first pick here on Infernal Shrines, with there being a lot of other priority picks available. And the second pick team is going to want to ban Johanna because she's still really strong, even after the patch. We'll see in time if she's still the most broken hero in the game, but she's very strong, and with that in mind, the second pick team is safe to just ban it first, so that their second ban can be a little bit more flexible.
And I do like the Stukov, as you had mentioned in the past. He's a goalie. He can kind of block a lot of entry points as well as during the siege potential as well. And Joanna's fantastic in a rotation-heavy based map. What are we going to get for these second two bans from both of these teams?
So Blaze is a good one just in general, but also on Infernal Shrines. One of the things that's really specific about this map is controlling just the chokes of the shrine, and a hero like Blaze does that better than pretty much anyone. Being able to throw oil down in the choke and then have the threat of a big jet propulsion coming out onto that to stun them all in the choke is really scary. So Blaze is a good safe ban. He also does a pretty good job of stealing the shrine on the other side, trying to just steal 1 or 2 skeletons on the other side. And then for the other team, banning the Rhaegar, as Rhaegar was also changed, but not entirely sure where his power level lies. So to be safe, we're going to go ahead and ban that for the second team as well.
We still have a lot to figure out with Rhaegar and Joanna, but I would be in the same boat as you. Even in my own Storm League games, I was still banning out Rhaegar and Joanna just because it's like, well, you know, I haven't been sold just yet on Rhaegar being super nerfed. But either way, I mean, Ancestor Healing and Farseer's Blessing, those two talents right there are just so strong right now. And we're seeing it so popularized. But let's start getting into our first picks, because our first pick team does have that available. I mean, anything. Do they go tank, healer, support, range? What's the priority here?
So based on the bans, the first pick team is going to want to take just the strongest thing they can get overall. In this case, it would be Junkrat, because Junkrat has not only good zone control for the shrine, being able to set up traps and the knockbacks on the chokes of the shrine, but also just having a really good shrine clear himself and being able to steal the enemy's skeletal defenders very easily with those Qs. Junkrat's just a really overall solid first pick for Infernal Shrines. He has a ton of shrine control and a ton of damage for the shrine as well.
He's also, as you've used this term, and I said it earlier, he's a great goalie. Concussion Mines, you can control those choke points. Chattering Teeth with the priority talents onto heroes are great as well. Really, really like the Junkrat to kick things off. But we get into our Team 2 on the right-hand side. What do they start to evolve, as they only have 2 picks in this first phase of the draft?
So keeping in mind that Diablo is a huge priority on this map, for a number of reasons. He controls the chokes well. He can play really well on that halfway point that I talked about for the tanks, where if you're on that halfway point, being able to flip the enemy tank into your team is really valuable. With that in mind, taking something like a Tychus to preemptively counter it is really strong, especially when he has Odin, which another big aspect of this map is just drafting things with large cooldowns, like the Odin or like Alex with Dragon. Being able to just pop an Odin on the shrine and have 22 seconds of being just a huge juggernaut, stealing shrine objective, just playing super aggressively for 22 seconds, that's about as long as a shrine fight lasts. So taking the Tychus for that, and also taking an offlaner in Hogger. Having the Blaze already banned, the amount of shrine control that you have from Hogger being able to kill the skeletal defenders and control the chokes in the same sense is just really strong. So Hogger Tychus, very, very powerful 2 picks for the second team.
Well, and Hogger also has, if you set it up right, quite a few bounces around the shrines, can get some good camp steals, and has great solo lane clearing, and also control with that staggering blow, shockwave, or even hortipult. But of course, 2 more picks will happen from our left-hand side team before we get into our second ban phase. This Junkrat was already grabbed. What do they pair with this? Is it go into the tank, go into the healer? What do you look for here, Justing?
So this would be oftentimes where you would see a Diablo picked up, but with the Tychus being picked up by Team 2, it kind of dissuades that Diablo pick quite a bit. You don't really want to opt into picking it into the Tychus. So picking up something like a Leoric for your off lane that matches up fairly well into Hogger, but mostly just gives you a lot of shrine control yourself. Having the Leoric to do % damage, where Junkrat kind of falls short on killing tanks, it supplements it very well. And then pairing that with the Anduin, which there has been a bit of a support choke going on here with the Stukov and Rhaegar being banned away at the beginning, and the second pick team not picking one, taking that Anduin to not only get a priority healer, but also to deny that from the enemy team while you're picking up the Leoric with the Entomb. You can deny that counter to the Entomb, and you can also deny the Hogger Hortipult Light Bomb combo. So taking a Leoric Anduin, really strong here for the first pick team.
And you get that Glyph of Faith at level 16 for the double pull for extra safety as well. So Team 1 shaping up with a really nice draft here, but we're getting into the ban phase, and you had talked a lot about Diablo. With this Tychus being picked up, do the members of Team 1, the left-hand side, do they have to worry about this Diablo? Is this still a priority for the opposing side team?
So the Diablo is not so scary if you're Team 2, but if you're Team 1, you're still really afraid of it because the enemy has the Tychus, so the Team 2 is going to mostly just ban something that's a good sustained damage dealer, because Junkrat, while he does damage, he's not very good at killing tanks, and you have the Tychus for Team 2, so looking to ban something like a Sylvanas that synergizes well with the map objective and also just does a good job of putting out sustained damage to kill tanks is a good ban for Team 2. And then Team 1 begrudgingly has to ban out that Diablo because they don't want to pick it themselves, and giving away Diablo on the second rotation of picks on Infernal Shrines is just a little bit too much of a priority pick going away to Team 2, so it has to be banned by Team 1.
All right, well, so a Diablo and a Sylvanas ban, and Team 2 will have the pick priority after the second ban phase. We've already got a Hogger, we've already got a Tychus, still needing main tank, healer, and maybe some extra damage. What do you grab here? Because I know we've talked about this a lot in the past. You really want to be flexible with that last pick if you are that team that doesn't have first pick priority.
Yeah, proper draft etiquette has been kind of a theme of the series so far, and taking the Hogger Tychus, getting your offlane and your ranged, your sustained damage ranged early is good. Following that with your support and your tank so that you can be flexible with that last pick. Your last pick can be anything. Taking, with Stukov, Rhaegar, and Anduin all banned out, your main options are really Lucio or Brightwing. I would look to go with the Brightwing because it pairs really well with the Hogger. And just having all of that sustained AoE healing on the shrine is really nice. Having the ability to save one target and having that extra CC chain is really useful, especially when Tychus has got the minigun on somebody. And you could pair that with something, you want to pick a tank that's relatively safe. So the Murden is a solid option here. Murden with that 13 fire is a lot of healing on the shrine. It's kind of underutilized. It's not something that people maybe think about too much, but it definitely makes a big difference. It kind of turns Murden into a bit of a Sonya. So taking the Brightwing and the Murden, just really strong and solid all-around picks to remain flexible for the second pick team.
I love it a lot. You have the polymorph into the Stormbolt, and as you had mentioned, that Bronzebeard Rage from the Murden is great self-sustain and also just increased damage as well. Once you land that Stormbolt onto an enemy hero, or even still, that burning rage around for shrine clearing control. So I like that quite a bit from the side of Team 2. But how does Team 1 wrap up their draft? They've got the Junkrat, Leoric, and the Anduin.
Yeah, so this is a situation where you could go into Cho'Gall here, but we won't do that today.
Yes! Oh!
You could. Your draft is set up. If you draft properly from first pick, you do end up in a situation where you have a ranged, you have an offlane, you have support. You did a good job. If you can pick Cho'Gall, you did a good job up until now. We're not going to go that route. We're going to get a Vala and a Mei. And the reason for that is that Junkrat doesn't have very good sustained damage into tanks. And you do have Leoric with the Drain, but you don't really want to rely entirely on that to be able to kill the front line. So picking up a Vala that is also enabled by the Anduin with the pull, it's just a lot of good sustained damage to be able to chip away at the front line of the Hogger and the Muradin. And then Mei, we don't see her a ton, but she has a lot of zone control, which is really what you want on Infernal Shrines. And you want to be able to counter engage quite a bit with this team comp and peel for your Vala, and she just does that really well. She's not really a target herself, And the blinds are very good into Tychus, into pretty much everyone, into Hogger, into Tychus, into Murden. The blinds are good, and just the zone control that she has on the Shrine, really strong. And so you're just going to be looking to draft a really slow style, just really defensive, and kind of playing around your Vala composition for Team 1.
Now, just really quickly on the Vala, she's got so many different builds and ways to play her, which I really much do appreciate with how her talent tree works in the game. Looking at Infernal Shrines, is this a Fire at Will? Is this a Puncturing Arrow? Is this a Creed of the Hunter? What do you go for at level 1?
I'd definitely be looking to go with the multi-shot build here.
Okay.
It plays really well on the Shrine, being able to snipe out the enemy's skeletal defenders and being able to get quite a few stacks while everyone is fighting in a close area on the Shrine. And if anyone tries to funnel through the chokes, you have that big multi-shot damage coming out. So if you could go the auto attack build if you didn't feel too threatened, but typically the safe route would be to go with that multi-shot build and just focus on the zone control and just the AoE damage, the spread damage on the Shrine.
Well, there's a lot of zone control from Team 1 right now, and how does Team 2 on the right-hand side with this last pick, how do they flex into all of this? They've got Hogger, Tychus, Brightwing, and Muradin, and we've always talked about this in the draft etiquette. You want to be flexible with this last pick, and it feels like Team 2 can go into anything. They could go really bruisery, and they could do the hyper carry Tychus, but there's the blinds from May, so what do you look for here to kind of wrap up this composition for Team 2?
So you want something that does just a lot of team fight damage. You can kind of pick almost anything in this last pick because you do have that Tychus to kill tanks. You do have just the Shrine control already between the Odin and the Hogger. This is where I'd look to get something that's a little bit more team fight focused. Something like a Mephisto is great here. If typically on Infernal Shrines with your last pick, you have the option to go into something either like a Tassadar or with the wall and the laser to kind of do the same thing to just create a lot of chaos on the Shrine. Mephisto does a similar thing. And you're just going to be blinking into the enemy team. And on the Shrine, there's so many opportunities for resets with his passive when everyone has to be clumped up on the Shrine. Even if they're not all coming through the same choke on the Shrine, they're going to be almost perfectly spread out to be hit by the Mephisto W. So I'm a big fan of Mephisto on this map, and it just pairs really well with the rest of the aggressive comp from Team 2. You do have the option to go into something like a Malthael here. That's the one thing that on Infernal Shrines is a little bit different, is things like Malthael, Sonya, and Ragnaros. Heroes that we don't necessarily see too much on most maps do get quite a lot of extra value on Infernal Shrines, but into the Vala and the Junkrat, it's a little bit too much ranged for that. So picking up something like a Mephisto, a little bit better option.
I do like that Ragnaros as well. You can Molten Core to kind of steal away the shrines, or even Molten Core as a defensive tool, or even an aggressive tool when you're pushing with the Mortar Punisher, or any Punisher for that matter. Now, we have two really, really good drafts here, Justing, and we didn't really break down who we're drafting for. In your eyes, who would come out on top of this? I know execution is one thing in Heroes of Storm, but if we look at the draft, who's kind of on top of Infernal Shrines from either of these sides?
I would give the slight edge to Team 2 in this situation. The amount of value that Tychus has on this map in particular with the Odin might be a little bit too much for Anduin to deal with. But once you get to level 20, I think things get a little bit easier for Team 1. So it really would come down to execution. I would say that Team 2 should be winning for most of the game, but once you get the Buried Alive from Leoric, things can change really quickly because you can really just blow someone up with a single Buried Alive on a single target from Team 1. And it does become a lot more difficult at level 20. So Team 2 would be probably looking to play really aggressively and try to close out the game before 20 if possible. And Team 1 would be mostly looking for level 20s for their strong power spikes to come online.
I'm thinking about this right now, and this is something we might have to try in our Tuesday videos, where we do like an Anduin Junkrat, and Junkrat gets the light bomb and then does the concussion mine to push himself as like a falling sword Junkrat sort of deal. Like we might be coming up with another new synergy here. But I agree. I really like the Mephisto. I like the poke potential. The Tychus is really, really strong here, and I think we've drafted two amazing drafts for Infernal Shrines. But I do agree, Team 2 does have that slight edge. Do you have any final thoughts on the drafting for Infernal Shrines, or any notes that you'd like to pass along to anyone who's looking to improve their Infernal Shrines drafting?
Yeah, mostly just the map specifics there's kind of some prerequisites you need. You need to have Shrine clear. You ideally want someone who can solo the Shrine. So in this example, Leoric is that for the Team 1. Team 2 doesn't really have someone who can easily solo the Shrine. Hogger can do it, but it's not quite as reliable as Leoric. Bruisers are a lot more valuable on this map, like a Malthael or a Sonya or a Ragnaros. things with large cooldowns, like the Tychus Odin or Alexstrasza with Dragon are quite good. And then just Shrine control, things that control chokes very well are super strong, like the Entomb, the Blaze, things like Diablo with both of his heroics, Mephisto, just anything that controls chokes and can snipe away the enemy objective, really strong. And split pushing is completely illegal on Infernal Shrines. You have to play for the objective.
Well, there you go. You now know how to draft Infernal Shrines, and you now know how to beat every single team you run into on the map. Thank you, Justing, for joining me for another draft educational video. In the future, we encourage you to leave some comments below on any drafts or styles that you'd like us to break down. Until then, make sure you check out other videos that we've done over here.